We're back with our second segment at the Western Railway Museum. This facility has one of the most extensive collections of electric railway equipment in the West. Hunter Lose is here to give us the history.
This is Railroad Showcase.
Our first car that we're here looking at today is San Francisco Municipal Railway number 178. This car was built in 1923 by Bethlehem Shipbuilding's facility that they had in San Francisco. They had a facility in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, but it was their San Francisco facility that built this car. And this car ran in San Francisco from 1923 until 1958, at which time our organization purchased the car. And before we purchased the property here at Rio Vista Junction in 1960, this car was in Yuba City and Marysville doing fan trips on the Sacramento Northern, and it did that up until the early 60s. And this car also in 1982 had a repatriation in San Francisco during the Great Trolley Festivals of 1982 and 1983. And now it is one of our main cars for service here at the museum, and it runs most weekends, so whenever anyone comes out to visit, they get a good chance that they can ride this car. So this car we're at here now is East Bay Street Railways number 352. East Bay Street Railways was a predecessor to Key System. And this car is in the cat whisker paint, which is a bluish teal with some beige, and they call it cat whisker because of the design here on the front of the car. And this car was built in 1911 by the American Car Company of St. Louis. You wouldn't know it, but this is an all-wooden car. You wouldn't think that because of the steel sheathing they have over the wood. Key System did this in the 1930s to modernize their equipment, to make it look better, to make it more enticing as the streetcar system stuff was winding down. And so this car, when it was originally built, had a clear story roof and had complete wood paneling all the way down the side. So this car right here is the Petaluma and Santa Rosa Railroad number 63. This car is what's known as a combine. If you can see there, there's a passenger section, and in the back there is a baggage section. This car was built in 1904 by the American Car Company of St. Louis and ran on the Petaluma and Santa Rosa Railroad. Passenger service ended in 1932, and all the original metal and metal hardware under the car, like the trucks and motors and everything, was scrapped. The car body became a summer cabin up by Lake Berryessa, and in the late 1960s, the body came here to Rio Vista and was fully restored, and the car started operating in the mid-1970s and has been one of our main operational cars here at the museum ever since. This car is a 600-volt car. This car has 4 600-volt motors under it. We have some cars here that can run on 1200 or 1500 volts on our 600-volt system. They are just slower. This is one of the fastest cars out of all of our older wooden cars because of the 4 600-volt motors, and it really has some get up and go to it. Coming up next is Portland Traction 4001, and this car was built by the Coleman Car Company in 1926, and it was originally for the Indiana Railroad. When the Indiana Railroad got rid of their cars, they became streetcars in Terre Haute before going to Portland Traction Company. This car came to us as a gift for us leasing our Key System 987 car to Portland Traction back in the late 1950s when they were short of cars. Its restoration was finished in 2015 for Members Day, and it is restored to its original Portland Traction livery, and then after that they became cream and red toward the end. And this car is capable of doing up to about 30 miles an hour. It usually sees service every other week or so, depending on what operator likes to take it out, and it's a lot of people's personal favorite. This is the last of all of the Key System bridge units that were built. This one was built by St. Louis Car Company in 1937, and it ran on the Key System from 1937 until 1958. 187 was originally owned by the Pacific Coast Chapter Railway and Locomotive Historical Society, and we acquired it from them as a gift in 1988. The car is painted in its orange and silver pre-war appearance. So the key system bridge unit, as you can see, is one of the larger interurban cars. It's what you call an articulated car, meaning that there is a center joint that pivots. If you can see there toward the center of the car, you can see the truck where the articulation happens. And these cars were underpowered, especially on the approach up to the Bay Bridge. The articulation truck is not powered because these were big, heavy cars and it was quite a substantial grade going up to the Bay Bridge. They had their struggles. This is Sacramento Northern number 1005 on point of our Sacramento Northern interurban train, recreating a classic scene that you would have seen on the Sacramento Northern in the 1930s. This car was built in 1912 by the Holman Car Company of San Francisco, is capable of running on 600, 1200, and 1500 volts. This car was originally built for the predecessor of the Sacramento Northern, the Oakland, Antioch, and Eastern. Then it became part of the San Francisco-Sacramento Railroad, which later became the Sacramento Northern subsidiary of the Western Pacific. Our organization acquired this car in 1951 after it became a key system service car. And we repainted it back to Sacramento Northern colors and used it on fan trips everywhere all over the Bay Area in the 50s and 60s. We have now made our way into the restoration shop here at the museum to talk to you a little bit more about some more cars on the property. And this is probably the most important car on our entire property, because if it weren't for this car, none of this would be here today. This car is key system number 271, and this was the first car that our organization purchased in 1946. This car was originally built in 1901 for Lehigh Valley Transit, and then went to the key system shortly after Lehigh Valley got the car. They were almost new. And this car was in service on the key until 1946. These were cars that were really carrying a lot of people during the war when rationing was really high. The transit systems had to use anything they could get their hands on to keep moving the public around, and so this car was part of that. This car has been in the restoration shop now for the last 3 years. We are doing a complete ground-up restoration on the car. We have rebuilt both ends, which is why you are seeing this in primer here. And then up on the clear story, we're doing roof work. Top speed is about 55 or 60 miles an hour because we put higher horsepower motors on the car in the 50s. Our organization actually went to the key shops in Emeryville, and we put higher horsepower motors on the cars from the 600 series class cars that predated the key system bridge unit that you saw earlier. There were some that were surplus, and they put that under this car. So you look at it and you think, little street car that puts along, and you realize it keeps wanting to go faster. So this car wants to move. This is Sacramento Northern number 654, and this is the locomotive that brought down the curtain to electrification on the Sacramento Northern. This is what you call a steeple cab locomotive, and this was built by General Electric in 1930. And this car worked in freight service on the Sacramento Northern until the final day of electrification on April 10th of 1965. Our organization acquired the locomotive shortly after that, and it's always been one of our main operating pieces of equipment here at the museum. And it's been a personal favorite of a lot of people because most people who are still alive today who remember the Sacramento Northern as an electrified railroad remember these guys. Its sisters, which are 653 and 652, both survive. We also have the 652, and the 653 is down at the Orange Empire Railway Museum.
The extended segment in our full episode has twice as much content. Head over to our website and become a member for access.
Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And please find us on Facebook by going to our discussion group, Railroad Showcase, RPO. And remember, keep your hand on the throttle and your eye on the rail.